Good morning. We now discuss the second part of gene regulation, which is mainly related to eukaryotic gene. Now, the gene expression in eukaryotes is more complex. Now, in the case of prokaryotic genes, the major part of the genome is expressed, whereas in the case of the eukaryotic genome, the major part of the eukaryotic genome is not expressed. The genome is large and its size is around 3,20,000 kb, and only 1.5% of this genome is expressed. It carries around 1 lakh genes. Now, only 23,000 proteins or protein encoding genes are present along the entire stretch of DNA. There are 23 pairs of diploid chromosomes. So there is redundancy in the DNA. So not all the genes are expressed. Another peculiarity is that operons are not generally found in eukaryotes. And in eukaryotes, the nucleus has a nuclear membrane. So when you look at prokaryotes and eukaryotes, the primary site of regulation is at the site of transcription. But as I told you, eukaryotes are unique in that operons are not found. Alternate strategies have been used by eukaryotes to coordinately regulate all the genes which are required for a specific response. Gene expression is regulated at multiple levels other than transcription. So including transcription, I can't say other than, including transcription, gene expression is also regulated at multiple levels. Now, where does the gene expression, where does it get regulated in eukaryotes? There are 4 levels of control in the case of eukaryotes: at the level of replication, transcription, post-transcriptional, translational, and post-translational. So I'll be dealing with the regulation at each of these stages. The first is the gene regulation at the DNA level or at the level of replication. Now, genes can be altered by gene amplification. Gene amplification means many copies of genes are generated to produce large quantities of proteins. For example, the expression of a gene is increased several fold, like in Drosophila, where the amplification of genes coding eggshell proteins occurs during oogenesis, that is the developmental stage of the organism. Now, in the case of malignant cells, they develop resistance to an anti-cancer drug like methotrexate by amplifying the gene coding for the enzyme dihydrofolate reductase, the enzyme which is inhibited by methotrexate. Second way genes can be regulated at the DNA level is by gene rearrangement. The segments of DNA may move from one location to another in the genome, and they associate with each other in various ways so that different proteins are produced. This is the mechanism by which antibody diversity is explained. It can be explained on the basis of gene rearrangement or transposition of genes or the somatic recombination of genes. The example which is quoted is that the synthesis of light chain of immunoglobulin. Each light chain is encoded by 3 distinct segments: the variable V1, joining or J1, and the constant C1. During the differentiation of B lymphocytes, a VL segment, that is a V light segment, variable light segment, may be brought close to the J light and the constant light segment to form a particular light chain. So this figure elegantly describes how this transposition can occur. So this represents the gene segments that undergo rearrangement while the B cells mature. So we see that a V3 segment is aligned with the J2 segment and a constant segment. Okay, these segments are recombined to obtain B3, J2 and C. Now the intervening mRNA sequence is removed and the finished sequence is transcribed into the pre-mRNA. The transcript processing yields mature mRNA transcript with all the introns snipped out and the exons spliced together. The mature mRNA is then translated into a polypeptide chain, which in this case is the light chain of an antibody molecule. So here we find that the desired regions, that is the V3, the J2 and the constant regions have all been spliced to give the light chain of one kind of antibody molecule. Now the next is gene loss. If genes are deleted or partially deleted from cells, functional proteins cannot be produced. Now take the example of immature erythroblasts which contain nuclei that produce mRNA for expressing the global chains of hemoglobin. As the cells mature, the nuclei are extruded out and the fully mature RBC is devoid of nucleus. The fourth method at the DNA level is the methylation of DNA or the chemical modification of DNA. Methylation can lead to loss of transcriptional activity and inactivation of the genes. In eukaryotes, methylation helps to maintain the inactive chromosome. So the base cytosine in both the strands may be methylated to produce 5-methyl cytosine. Most methylated DNA will remain inactive during differentiation and repeated cell division. So methylation is most important in preventing transcription of genes which is intended to be switched off. So this figure again very nicely shows how the genes can be switched on and switched off. So we talked about methylation. Another process is acetylation. Acetylation of histones will lead to activation of gene expression. By acetylation, the nucleosome structure is disrupted and which will permit transcription. So in the first case, we see that the gene has been switched on. The chromatin is an active open form. The cytosines are unmethylated and the histones are acetylated. And the transcription factors and coactivators are all bound at the correct place. In the second figure, we find that the gene is switched off. Here we find that the chromatin is condensed and therefore it is silent, it cannot transcribe. The cytosines are all methylated, as you can see with the red circles, and the histones are deacetylated. So deacetylation means that the chromosome will get condensed. So methylation will lead to loss of transcriptional activity, that is, the gene is switched off. Acetylation enables the gene to get switched on. So chemical alterations occurring on histone proteins therefore remodel the chromatin and make it transcription friendly. Now let's look at the second level, and that is at the level of transcription. The first thing we look at is chromosomal packaging. So transcriptional regulation can be seen at two levels. The first is chromosomal packaging. As you can see, the DNA is folded and packed to form a protein DNA complex called the chromatin. The chromatin structure, as I told you earlier, provides additional level of control of gene expression. Tight packaging of the chromatin makes the chromosomes inaccessible to the transcription machinery, and as you can see there, it is known as the silent or the heterochromatin. Now, genes that are transcribed are less condensed and forms the active euchromatin. So we have the tightly packed chromatin, which is known as the heterochromatin, which is a silent and cannot transcribe, and we have the active euchromatin where transcription can occur, and it is less condensed. The second level at which regulation by transcription can occur is at the level of individual gene regulation. Now, all eukaryotic genes require regulatory factors. So, one group of factors are known as the transcription factors, which bind to the promoter site, and another region called the enhancer. Now, the enhancer may be located at a distance from the gene. So, these transcriptional factors are required for RNA polymerase to bind. And transcription will begin when the factors at the promoter region binds with the factors at the enhancer region, creating a loop in the DNA. Okay, so this figure again shows you very elegantly how the transcription is regulated. So we have the general transcription factors which bind to the promoter region. But for transcription to begin, these transcriptional factors should bind to the enhancer. These enhancers may be present at a distance from the region where or the origin where transcription occurs. And so for the binding of the enhancer to the transcription factors, there will be a looping of the DNA. And only when this binding between the transcription factors and the enhancers occur will the transcription initiation complex be ready to allow RNA polymerase to come and bind and for the process of transcription to occur. Now, these transcription factors have a functional domain for DNA binding and one for activation of transcription. So, based on their DNA binding domains, the transcription factors can be differentiated. So, these association of the DNA elements and the proteins can affect gene expression. So, there are specific motifs in the DNA binding domains of transcription factors which facilitates the binding. And 4 main motifs have been identified. One is the helix-turn helix, which is seen in the case of the lactose repressor and the cyclic AMP cap protein, the zinc finger motif, the leucine zipper motif, and the helix loop helix. So this figure gives you an idea of the different types of motifs which we see in the functional domain of the transcription factors. This functional domain is the one which is going to bind with the DNA. Now, transcription factors can also be regulated by signals from other molecules like hormones. Now, in the first case, we can see that the hormones can cause coordinated regulation through binding of the hormone receptor complex to the DNA. So, this is particularly seen in the case of the steroid hormone. The steroid hormone binds to the receptor, the hormone receptor complex, then binds to specific sites on the DNA, and then it will promote both transcription and translation, and you get a specific activated protein. Now, in the second case, we can see how the binding of a protein is activated in response to a second messenger. Okay, so here we see the hormone is again binding to the receptor. This then activates the G proteins, which in turn activates adenine cyclase. The adenine cyclase then converts ATP to cyclic AMP, and then we have the binding of the cyclic AMP response element to the respective site on the DNA. So we have looked at 2 levels, at the level of replication or at the DNA level. We have also looked at the level of transcription. Now, regulation in eukaryotes can occur at the 3rd level, that is at the post-transcriptional regulation. That is, it is able to regulate RNA after it has been produced, and this is much more extensive in the eukaryotes. There are two major levels at which post-translational modifications occur. The first is alternate splicing, and the second is regulation of RNA stability. So let's look at the first case, that is alternate mRNA splicing. Different mRNAs can be formed by alternate splicing, which can code for different isoforms of proteins. So as you can see in the figure, you can have, here we see two alternately spliced mRNAs. In the first case, we see that the red segment has been spliced with the yellow and the blue. And the second case, we see the red segment being spliced with the green and the blue. So two different mRNAs have been formed just by alternate splicing. When they are translated, you get two different isoforms of the protein. So this is how protein isoforms are formed by alternate mRNA splicing, which occurs after transcription. Now, second aspect is the regulation in RNA stability. This can operate in the nucleus or the cytoplasm. Now, in the nucleus, some genes produce hRNA which is not processed to mRNA. These transcripts are degraded in the nucleus itself and not transported to the cytoplasm. Now, in the cytoplasm, mRNA of different genes may vary in their half-lives. So, genes coding for a protein with long duration of action like beta-globin gene will have a long half-life, and genes coding for a protein with short duration of action like the growth factors will have a short half-life. Then the regulation in RNA stability is also dependent on the speed of transport through the nuclear pore. It is dependent on the longevity of the mRNA. For example, the mammalian RBCs eject their nucleus but continue to synthesize hemoglobin for several months, indicating that the mRNA is still available to synthesize protein. And hormones. These certain hormones stabilize certain mRNA transcripts. Now, another aspect is class switching. One gene may be switched off and the functions taken up by a gene which is closely related. The best example is that of hemoglobin and immunoglobulin synthesis. So, gene switching is, as you can see in the figure, is also observed, as I told you, in the case of immunoglobulins. So, in the first, we see the transcript for IgM. Certain segments of the DNA has been removed. Okay, and the non-homologous end joining of DNA then occurs at the switch regions. And then, so IgM is formed during primary immunoresponse. When this segment of DNA is removed and there is the end joining of the DNA, then what happens? You have the conversion of IgM to IgG, which is formed during the secondary immune response. Now, another aspect of post-transcriptional regulation is mRNA editing. Even after mRNA has been processed, it may undergo additional post-transcriptional modification in which a base is altered. For example, RNA editing of ApoB lipoprotein in the intestine only to form ApoB48, which is shorter, needed for chylomicron synthesis. Next aspect is RNA interference. The mechanism of gene silencing through decreased expression of mRNA by repression of translation or by increased degradation. This plays a key role in cell proliferation, differentiation, and apoptosis. And this mode of gene regulation is now used therapeutically, especially in cancer treatment. So we have finished at the level of replication, at the level of transcription, at the level of post-transcription, and now we come to translational regulation. Translational regulation is very important in the case of eukaryotic initiation factor 2. The eukaryotic initiation factor 2 is inhibited when phosphorylated. So the classical example is that of globin synthesis. So this is a good example of translational regulation. The globins are produced when the heme levels are high. But the heme acts by preventing the phosphorylation of the eukaryotic initiation factor 2. The kinase which phosphorylates this initiation factor is inactivated when heme is bound. Thus, eukaryotic initiation factor 2 will initiate hemoglobin synthesis or globin chain synthesis when heme levels are high. Post-translational control. Post-translational control can be brought about by protein activation. This can be done by folding, enzymatic cleavage, bond formation. Examples are conversion of proinsulin to insulin. Again, post-translational control can be done through feedback control, like some enzymes in a pathway may be negatively inhibited by its product. It can be brought about by protein degradation or protein turnover. Proteins are constantly being degraded to prevent buildup of abnormal or unwanted proteins. Such proteins are tagged with ubiquitin, which are then recognized for degradation. So this finishes up the gene regulation in the case of eukaryotes.